right, welcome to the Multifamily Investor Nation podcast. I'm your host, Dan Hanford. With us today, we have our special guest, Robert Martinez. Robert, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me on your podcast.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to diving into this 440 unit property that you purchased called City Crossing out of East Houston, Texas, here in just a moment. But before we dive into that property, why don't you share with the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background and kind of where you are right now on the multifamily side of things?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks very much. My name is, again, Robert Martinez. I'm the owner and founder of a company called Rockstar Capital. We are an investment and property management company, vertically integrated in Houston, Texas. I got started back in 2007. I left my corporate job of 10 years, got kind of frustrated and, being underneath the man, and I wanted to go be my own man. So I joined a real estate club. I got educated. I paid $10,000 to join that club. Within the year, I was buying my very first deal as a passive member. Over the next 3 years, I had a business partner. He and I built a portfolio up to 2,000 units. And as life happens, relationships end. That relationship ended in 2011. I started Rockstar Capital. Over the next 10 years, we've gone on to buy over 4,000 apartment units. We currently have 19 communities. We've earned 17 city, state, and national apartment association awards. And I'm the country's only two-time national apartment owner of the year.
That is awesome. That's a great track record. Looking forward to kind of diving into this deal and kind of seeing what you're going to be, what your plans are for this deal and moving forward on some of your future acquisitions. So let's go ahead and dive into this and go straight into the topic of how you found and how you sourced this deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So the name of the game is relationships. In life, if you can communicate what you want, people will communicate back with you what they can deliver. So brokers know what's in this town. This isn't our first rodeo. As I said, we've done well over 20 transactions. We currently own and manage about 4,000 units, or roughly $420 million worth of real estate. So we were a known commodity. We just had to put a few whispers into some people's ears that we were interested. This opportunity came around. It was part of a larger fund, about a 20 property fund that tried to sell about a year earlier before COVID. And then for some reason, this property and a sister property in San Antonio were left out of the original sale. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, it created havoc. They're an out-of-town owner out of Atlanta, a very large firm. But what happens is when you're really far away and you're one property out of 20 other properties, they lose focus. It created an opportunity for us because they pretty much lost $2 million of value that they would have had the year before just because of COVID. And what that meant was the management team that they had was very, absent. They weren't present. They closed the offices. They did everything they could to make it COVID proof, I guess, right? And they drove down occupancy. They drove down NOI, created a buying opportunity for us.
So with this particular property being one of two that were out of a 20 portfolio or 20 property portfolio or fund that was being sold off, what was the reason why they didn't want this particular asset in the fund? Because
I don't remember.
Look at that and go, wait a minute, I don't want to deal that somebody else didn't want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't look at it like that. I think things happen for a reason. My business model and what I want is going to be different than yours and somebody else's. I don't know what the issue was. I don't know why the original buyer of the other 18 chose this one, the San Antonio one, that they didn't want. I think it may have had to do finance related, if I had to suspect. Remember, because it's now 2 years later when it's becoming available to us. They tried us out the year before COVID. COVID happened, and then you have a whole another six to 9 months during COVID before we got it. So I think I may have heard that it was finance related, something with the terms or what have you. But by the time we got to it, the terms weren't difficult. We wound up putting new debt on it, so it wasn't an issue for us.
So walk us through the process of where you actually first kind of heard about this deal and when you actually got to the point of submitting the first offer on it. What did you do ahead of time? Obviously you're underwriting it, but at what point did you go tour the property, those kind of things?
Well, for sure, we can always do a back of the napkin kind of underwriting approach. And as soon as you want to do that, before you go into a deeper dive, you need to put eyes on the product, and you need to be quick, because if they're talking to you, they're probably talking to somebody else too. So the moment we heard about it, we did a back of the napkin approach, said, hey, I can tour tomorrow. Went out there to the property. It was me, our chief investment officer, and our director of operations. We went out there, we toured the asset. We noticed that all the amenities were closed. We noticed that the office was closed. We noticed that many of the units that they wanted to show us were closed. All these were signs of bad management. You're seeing things that are broken, but just the fact that they weren't present meant that there was opportunity there because the residents aren't being taken care of. So they're going to be moving out. That's going to drive down the occupancy, which I think is what hurt NOI. But at one point, it was doing really well. I know where the numbers were 2 years ago. So why can't we get it back to there if we bring in our proper management? Our company's been recognized nationally as second best for our reputation rankings in our asset size class. So we know that with top level management, we can go in there and solve that problem.
And so you went out pretty much the next day.
The next
That's
day,
what's nice about being having a property right next to you, right?
yes,
You're
yes,
based there in Houston.
yes.
Just next day go out there to the property is great. And at what point after that did you go, okay, let's go ahead and quickly underwrite this thing? But then now we toured it. We're going to do a full underwriting. We're going to submit our first offer on this thing. Well, what was that timeline like?
Pretty quickly, again, as I said, the name of the game is speed. You want to make sure that you have your offer there first. But, as I suspected, other people came in. We had to then get into a horse race with other people, right? We're gonna be competing with others. So we just threw a blanket number out there to make sure that we were in the running. We kind of rely on a relationship. We rely on different aspects of trying to get that deal. You want to make sure you leave a little dry powder, and then when it's your time to come in, you got to come in hard. You got to come in with some hard money. You got to know what your number is going to be. You got to understand what your limits are, because they're going to press you for more money. What are you willing to go up to? And pretty much imagine them putting a bag over your head, right? They're doing it to everybody. Last one win. The last one to take his bag off his head wins, right? And so you're playing chicken with everybody else. How far are you willing to go? And that means constantly staying on the phone. My thought process is if they're not talking to me, they're talking to somebody else. The more I talk to them on the phone, the more relationship we're building together. I lead them along every step of the way. Hey, I'm letting you know I'm getting my financing. Hey, I'm getting my insurance estimate. Hey, I'm getting my rehab estimate. I want them to know that I'm the buyer. I want them to get very familiar with me because it's a sales process. One of the things that I did in my previous life was I was a sales guy. I have an engineering degree from Texas A&M, so I understand numbers, but I also have a sales aspect to me. People spend a lot of money to send me to sales school and understand how to speak to people. And one of the things is get them to like you. And I'm not talking about going out there and buying them chicken wings at Hooters. I'm talking about explaining to them why you're going to help them get what they want. What they want is to get paid. They want to make sure that they're going to pick one buyer, that buyer is going to close, and they're going to get their commission, right? So we've never retraded on anybody ever, on any deal we've ever done. We've never not closed a transaction that we started. Those are good buying signals. Those are good certainty for the broker, who in the end is going to use his influence to talk to the seller and say, hey, I think this is your guy. Really, the end user or the seller isn't really always the decision maker. He's relying on the brokers to tell him, who do I have? Who's the best offer? Who can close? What can I really get? Because at the same side, the seller wants to get this closed. He doesn't want to get pregnant and then not have anywhere to go. Make sense?
Oh yeah. And do you ever try or have on this one, did you try to preempt the offers?
Well, yeah, you always try to do that, but a good seller is not going to do that.
Yeah.
If he's smart and he's got time, he's going to make sure he listens to all offers and let all suitors come to the table and see. But for sure, we try to get an idea of what it would take. We knew we were willing to go that number. We flirted with the idea, but then we realized too that it wasn't real. It was going to be a horse race with everybody else.
Sure. And so now you've submitted the offer, you've kind of gone back and forth. You're now on this kind of best and final round. How many other buyers were there that were moved forward into this round of the best and final stage?
Yeah, to my knowledge, there was two other buyers in there. We were the only local buyer. There were two other buyers that were out of town. And then it comes into storytelling. It really does, because you're going to get on the phone. You're going to get on the phone with the broker. You're going to get on the phone with the seller. You want to make sure you have your finance guy on. I'm very fortunate too that one of my partners is a guy named Sam Morris. Sam's a former banker of 20 years, and now he's my right arm in the company as our chief investment officer. He knows exactly what the seller wants to hear, because the seller is going to have his finance people and his dispo team as well, and they're going to be asking questions. I had a director of operations there who had almost 30 years of operational experience, that they were going to be able to handle whatever questions we had. And primarily it was, how are you going to handle COVID? What are you going to do? How are you going to move forward during due diligence? What precautions are you going to take? It was a little bit different than normal, but when you have a competent team around you that knows how to speak for themselves and has been through the wars and the battles, it makes that little process much easier. So then you should be looking forward to getting on the phone with the seller and selling your capabilities, selling your ability to deliver the product to the closing line.
So now you're in this best and final round, you're submitting your best offer. Was there just one best and final round? Because I know lately there's been multiple kind of rounds of best and finals, if you will.
Yeah, at that point, it was just one more round. They said, okay, I knew after they interviewed us that we were going to be the best candidate. We were the first one up, which gives you the best opportunity, the first chance to make a good impression. After that, the pressure's on everybody else. Are they going to sound as competent as us? Are they going to sound as knowledgeable? And there's little signals that they send you along the way that lets you know if you're in first position, second position, or third position. And based on those signals that we were hearing, we were going to get the deal. So we may have come up just a little bit just to make it feel like they get a win. I don't have to win at all. I don't need 100% of the table. I just need to make sure I get everything on the table. So if I have to give them a little crumb there to make them feel like they got to win, that's okay. Because in the end, I'm not trying to make money overnight. This is not a flip deal. I'm going to hold this for the next 7 to 10 years. So I'll make my money in the long run.
Yeah. And what was the final offer price on this one that you
I believe we got it for 37 million.
37. So right at 37 million. And walk us through the kind of terms that you put into this contract as well, as far as, or obviously it's the initial LOI, but eventually to the PSA. But what are some of the terms that you put in there as far as the amount of time for due diligence and the time for closing, and if there were any extensions, and of course some of the earnest money deposit?
Well, of course, and remember, make sure that no matter what you get when you buy real estate, is that you have a way out. You know what I mean by that? If you buy this deal, are others willing to buy it from you in that 7 to 10 year horizon? Is it something that you feel there'll be other people there that'll be willing to take it off your hands? So if you don't feel comfortable, don't get into the deal. Once you do, then you're comfortable. You're going to go 30 days for due diligence and another 30 days to close. You always want to throw in some time for extensions. We always like to put in 2 15-day extensions that total to 30 days. Each one of those extensions, there'll be a monetary amount associated with it, probably 100,000 for each extension. And you're gonna have to put some hard money. I think on this deal, the hard money was somewhere in the range of, 300,000, I think it was, but it's what you have to show your strength. The more hard money you're showing to the seller, the more they want to go with you because you're showing confidence. You can't show any fear. You got to know, I've been here. I've done this 20 sometimes. I'm not afraid. I know what I'm going to look for. I know what's there. So as long as I have these key items that are front of mind, I'm not worried about putting hard money down. I'm not worried about going after, because I know already with my financing people what financing is available, if that works for me to get to the numbers that I need to get across.
With the terms that you like to do, the 30 30 15 15, do you typically always stay with that, or are there times where you have to negotiate it down from that so that you can come off of that a little bit to be a little more competitive?
I think that's been pretty standard for us. I haven't really come to too many situations where I've had to modify my plan, my business plan. It's typically 30 days to do my due diligence, 30 days to get the financing and close, and then the 2 15-day extensions. But you're not waiting till the day you get in a contract to start the process, right? You're starting this process the moment that you sent that LOI in, and your asset team and your acquisitions team are already doing number crunching, and they're doing their comparable market analysis. They're seeing where rents can go, so that before you ever get to signing on the dotted line, with some sort of certainty what this is going to look like on the backside. So it's 60 days to get the financing and close it is nothing, because I've already been probably taking at least 30 days. And if you have back and forth with the attorneys, sometimes you can slow that process down or speed it up, just depending on how you feel you need timing to work for in your behalf.
Now, as far as the earnest money deposit that you mentioned earlier of 300,000, I may have missed it, but how much of that was non-refundable and how much of it was refundable?
Yeah, so it was 1% earnest money, and I think 300, if I recall, was non-refundable. I mean, that's hard money.
Day one, yeah.
Day one, and so it's one of those things where, are you willing to cross that line to get the deal that you want? And if you're not, then you got to be careful, because if something doesn't work out right, you could be out $300,000. And it's not just my 300,000; it's the 300,000 belongs to my children. The 300,000 belongs to my family. Am I willing to risk that? So you've got to take an educated guess, an educated risk on what it is that you're putting hard money on the line for. Which is why I said you start your due diligence the day after you submit the LOI, and you start realizing that this is getting close.
And so you had the initial 300,000. So all of it was hard day one. After the 30 days due diligence, did you have an additional amount of earnest money deposit that was put up, or?
No, that was it.
Okay. So really, it really was just 60 days to close, because
60 days to close.
Yeah, it wasn't really a decision whether or not you're going to go for it or not in 30 days. You got 30,000, 300,000 hard. You're going to go. You're going to move forward with that deal, right? Unless you find something
That's what the
grossly
seller wants,
negligent.
right? That's what the seller wants. They want certainty. They
Yeah.
want to know that if they get into bed with you, that in the end they're going to get what they want, right? That they're going to get their deal sold.
Yeah. So walk me through a little bit about the unit mix on this property.
Yeah, so it's a combination of ones, twos, and threes. It's in a very heavy mix of demographic there. So there's a lot of one-bedroom apartments in this place because of kind of the demographic that's there. But what I appreciated there is that they already had done a little bit of a make-ready upgrade that gave us an idea of where rents could go. They did about 30% of the property to this higher standard.
They proved your business model.
Yeah, exactly. They proved the business model for us. Now, I understand that's a model of other people to show that it's worth more so they can ask you for more down the line. But you just got to ask yourself, how much more money am I going to commit to this? Am I going to go from 30% of the units to 50%, to 60%, to 75%? You never want to go to 100% because it's just not really realistic. You want to go to a certain amount because you also want to leave a little bit of meat on the bone for the next guy. So I guess if it goes really well, you can finish out the turns and upgrade those units, but you're still testing it, right? You make sure that you send your dispo team out there and they're market surveying in person. They're making sure that they go to each one of your comps, see what they look like, make sure that the rents that we're seeing on CoStar, which by the way is one of the best resources out there. It's expensive, but I think you get what you pay for there. Make sure you have some sort of resource, whether it's apartment data or someone like that, to get your market data. But does the market data you're getting off of your computer match the in-place rents that your infield team are seeing out there as they do their market survey?
And what are the average effective rents on this property?
When we bought it was just over $800 a unit. And then what happens is because it was COVID, there was no active management. So occupancy was I think it was in the low 90s, but we knew it was going to fall because what happens is you got people that aren't paying. And they're just trying to keep it above 90s to help you get your financing. So if you can collect the rent, great. But we knew that we're going to drop about 5 points after we take over as part of our housekeeping, as part of getting the non-payers that want to pay. What was really a challenge with this one is that because it's COVID, there's a lot of people. I mean, 440 units was a big asset for us to take down. And so you have a good, heavy percentage of people that are believing the propaganda that the government's putting out there that they may never have to pay. This eviction moratorium is going to go on forever. And so it starts to snowball. And that debt gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And if they don't believe you're going to enforce the basics of property management, they will not pay you. And so it's very important for them to realize that we're going to get paid one way or the other. And if they don't pay us, then we're going to mark your credit and you're not going to be able to live somewhere else. You may be able to find another apartment, but based on what we're going to do to you on your credit report, it won't be as nice as this one. So we have an obligation to provide you with quality housing. It's on the back of the term sheet of the lease agreement that you sign, and you have an obligation to pay your rent. And if one of us fails, there's remedies for that. One of the remedies that we like to use is we like to do liens, landlord liens. Again, I got started during 2007 during the recession, and there was no government help. There was none of that stuff. It was hand-to-hand combat. Luckily, I came from a commission background, so I knew how to kill what I was going to eat at night. I'm not afraid to knock on that door, collect rent. We're not afraid to knock on that door and seize your property as a landlord lien. So, we rented a warehouse out, storage lot. We put brand new TVs in there. We put PlayStations. We put all kinds of things in there that are luxuries in your life that we know you have money to pay for. Dan, literally, there were brand new cars in the parking lot to people that had $10,000 balances. There's brand new Samsung boxes. There's brand new TVs hanging in their living room, and yet they can't pay us rent. So, well, okay. We'll take matters into our own hands and we will get your attention one way or another.
Yeah. Did you ever seize any cars?
Did not seize any cars. I don't know if you're allowed to.
You probably wanted to.
Yeah, we did see car keys there. Typically if you seize the things that are of value, believe it or not, seizing a coffee pot, seizing the TV, seizing their PlayStations and Xbox 360s will get your attention. You want your stuff back. You'd be surprised how many people came to the office writing $3,000, $6,000 checks so they can get their Xbox back. They had the money. They've been working. They just chose not to pay. Now I sound like I'm the vicious landlord, but they have an obligation. And I've raised 138 million of private capital, and they entrust me to get a return on their capital, which means that I'm going to follow the ABCs of property management. And that means you're going to pay your rent. This is Texas. It's a landlord friendly state. There's remedies that encourage you to pay your rent. And if not, I'll take you to eviction court. People were taking advantage of the eviction moratorium and thinking that it was going to be like that forever. Well, you know, there is going to be a day to pay the piper. Fortunately, in Texas, they did come up with the Texas rent relief, which leads me back to my earlier point. With 440 units, we basically have a dedicated full-time person that's assigned to this property to work with our residents that have bad debt or that have, late fees and debt behind them to apply for this program so we can get their money and they can stay. It's been a good program. We've collected quite a bit through the landlord liens and now also through the rent relief programs.
Were you able to collect from the delinquencies from the prior owner as well?
Yeah, you can, right? Because you're buying everything as is. So day one, they're going to get their fair share of the probations. After X amount of days, you have to share with them anything you collect. Anything after that is yours. It's been written off.
Yeah. So obviously, right when you took over the property, $800 a unit. What's the business plan as far as the renovations? I know you mentioned 30% already been kind of proven the business model, but what are some of those things that are going to be done from a renovation perspective, interior and exterior, and what are your plans to be able to increase that average effective rent?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of major upgrades in interiors. I'm not a big granite guy. I'm a big service guy. Again, that's my sales background. I believe that if I take care of you, you will take care of me. So I'm going to put amenities outside because I know not everybody wants to be in their apartment. So I'm going to put a dog park. I'm going to put a pavilion. I'm going to make sure there's barbecue pits everywhere so you don't use your barbecue pit in your patio, which creates a safety hazard. We're also going to put the little stovetop gizmos that go underneath the vent hoods to protect the kitchen because that's where the number one area of a fire will start. So I also understand that everything I do is with the NOI in mind. So I want you to renew. So if I want you to renew, what do I need to do to make you renew? Every time somebody renews, they save you money. Your valuation goes up. The average move out will cost you roughly $3,000. And if you have vacancy loss, marketing costs, getting the unit ready, what have you. Well, $3,000 divided by a 6 cap is $50,000 of new valuation. So every time somebody stays, I make $50,000. Every time somebody leaves, I lose $50,000 and I got to replace them with somebody new, right? So the number one reason why people will move out is maintenance. The number one maintenance headache is air conditions. The biggest renovation item we did at this property was not upgrading and putting granite countertops in every unit, was putting a brand new air conditioner in every unit. This is Houston, Texas. And when it's not raining like it is today, it's really hot. And the last thing you want is your workforce housing tenant who's been working at the restaurants, working outside maybe, to come home to a hot apartment. I rent myself. I've had my air conditioning go down a couple of times, and I tell you what, it pisses you off. So I've learned firsthand how that feels. I don't want that to happen to my residents. I don't want to give them a reason to live. So if I can knock out the number one maintenance headache by giving everybody a piece of the renovation, by giving them a brand new air condition, the chances of them renewing improve. It's this kind of methodology and this kind of mindset that's helped us be ranked among the country's best for reputation management. I understand what they want. They just want quality housing. Nobody wants granite countertops. They love a new air conditioner that's blowing cold air on demand. And in many of these apartment homes, they don't get that for $800. You get it at your home, but you don't pay $800 in your mortgage. I certainly don't pay that on my rent. I pay several $1,000s for my rent, but I expect things to work. Well, why can't they have the same expectation? So again, I don't do a lot of heavy interior turns. I'm going to put new cabinet faces. I'm going to put, forward floors. I'm going to do the basics that everybody else does. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just going to make sure that I work on basic services. I'm going to change the air conditioners out so you have cold air. I'm going to put a new hot water boiler so that you have hot water on demand, consistent. So those two things are the biggest issues first. Then I want to make sure that you don't have to go to the washroom at night. I mean, it's 2021. If you have a washer and dryer connection, you should have a washer and dryer in your apartment. That's part of our business model as well, to making sure that all of our units have washer and dryers so that they never have to leave the comfort of their home to do their laundry.
So what's the planned amount as far as the amount of CapEx that you're planning per unit to be able to implement some of these things?
Yeah, we did about a $5,000 renovation plan. You know, we got pretty good pricing on our air conditions. We added LED lights throughout the property, and there was a lot of fat on this deal. We focused on customer service. So with the air conditions that we did, we've seen renewals increase. We did see a drop as we suspected, because if you have not paid in 8 to 10 months, and now someone's knocking on your door trying to get money, you kind of get harassed. You don't like it, and you leave. Those that stayed enjoyed the renovation. They also agreed that during the process they'll work with us to pay their rent. So you know we've been helping them apply for the Texas rent relief. We've gotten very good. We've probably collected almost $200,000 of that program just on this property alone. So as you can tell, it's big numbers for us to try to keep those residents there, try to save their credit, and then try to earn that renewal next time around.
So obviously you're going in, doing some renovations, 5,000 a door, interior, exterior,
Yep.
improving the community.
Yep.
What's the plan as far as the increase in the rents from the 800 to X?
Yeah, for sure. Because if they stay, then they're gonna be willing to pay you a gratuity, which is increased rent. So if we renew them, we've made $50,000. If you can get another $10 on a 200 unit property, right? That's $400,000 of more valuation just with $10. Right. So now we're talking a 400 unit property. So that's $800,000 of new valuation just with a $10 modest rent bump. Right. So my goal is to make the rents affordable, but I'm also going to add a little bit of other features to make it nice for you. For example, we're changing out the gate system right now. The provider we're going with allows you to open up the gate from your phone. How cool is that? I mean, have you heard of that before?
No,
I'm sorry.
I have not heard about that yet.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a company we're using. So we're going to spend about $40,000 to replace the 3 gates that we have. They're going to get all new mechanisms and everything that works, but we're also going to have software that allows it to be downloaded to your phone so you can open up the gate when you come home. No more clickers that get lost or anything like that. And then you can, if your mom wants to come into the apartment, you can open up the gate for her and we can charge that. So I'm more of the nickel and dime. I'm not going to try to hit you with a heavy rent bump. I'm going to try to earn it through your renewal and through the amenity fees that we're going to give you, because we're going to put brand new amenities. I mean, you're going to have a beautiful dog park. You're going to want to be outside there. With that dog park, I'm going to see that you have pets. I'm going to charge you a pet fee. I'm going to charge you a non-refundable deposit. I'm going to put a washer and dryer in your unit. So I'm going to charge you a flat rate to use the washer and dryer every month. So there's other different things that we can do that's not just rent to get the income that we need, their ROI for our investors.
Sure. So as far as the increase from the $800 per month, what's the plan to be able to increase that to afford to be able to spend the 5,000 per month?
I couldn't hear. I'm sorry. You came in and out.
Sure. So what's the plan to be able to increase from the 800? Obviously, you got to increase higher than $800 per month, whether you're
Sure.
calling it amenity rent or some other type of rent or whatever, or income on the other income side. So what's the plan per unit to increase that to be able to afford the $5,000 per unit?
Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to the renewals, but we also because we are doing the new air conditions, we are adding low flow toilets. We're doing things to reduce our carbon footprint, right? That creates a savings. And what I want to do is create a win-win for my investor and for the tenants. So we charge a flat rate utility program that includes their water, their trash, their valet trash, that includes the gas, and we charge them a flat fee depending on square footage and the number of bedrooms in there, like $199, $299, $399, or whatever the number is going to be, and that's a flat rate. Within that flat rate, I'm able to make an ROI based on what I pay and what we're able to charge back, almost like an almost paid model, except that I separate it out. And the tenant loves that because his utility bill is the same as it is in July as it is in December. It's just like their rent is. They just want to know what their monthly obligation is. They don't want fluctuations. They can't handle fluctuations in life. At the same time, if I'm replacing a 20-year-old AC and I'm putting a brand new AC at 16 SEER, there's going to be energy savings. If I'm going to put the property on my commercial rate, which the average tenant has, probably average support credit, 11 cents, 10 cents a kilowatt hour. I'm going to put them on my 4 cent a kilowatt hour rate. There's a savings there for the same energy. So it's a win-win for them. It's a win-win for us. That creates a spread in there somewhere between $75 and $80 on top of whatever rent. So if we can get that program implemented, which we have in other properties, then that helps us get the NOI that we need to later on refinance or sell.
Yeah. And when it comes to the kind of selling process, if you will, I'm sure there's probably more of a sales process you have to be able to educate your property managers on to, because whenever you're walking through a unit, I've done a lot of secret shops in my day.
Yeah.
I've never been to a unit where they've been like, let me tell you about the HVAC that's actually brand new. Instead of going to the property across the street for a similar price, you can come to our property and it's brand new. It was just replaced, in the last 12 months, and try to sell them on the fact that they're going to have quality versus just, being with somewhere else where there's just like a number.
That's exactly what we do. If you go to any of our model, and I'm one of those guys that you have to have a model. And if you're going to have a 400 plus unit property, you have more than one model. You have one model that shows your ones, your twos, your threes, because you have the units. You can do it, right? So you want a controlled model that every morning the manager's going to walk, make sure all the lights are on, make sure that the apartment's tidy and it smells good. And then on our models, we take the air conditioning cover off purposely so they can see the brand new unit. It's a reminder to my staff to talk about it, and we want to show them, because again, as I said, the number one maintenance headache is the number one reason why people move out, and it's air conditions. Eliminate that. Where they're probably leaving their last place because of maintenance, and I bet their air condition wasn't brand new. If you get a brand new air condition, that's really exciting. That's like, imagine how you get remember when we were younger and you would get a brand new apartment and you got new carpeting. I don't know where you live. I know I lived in some value add Class C stuff in college, right? If I got a unit that had brand new carpet, I got super excited. But the next semester or the next year, I got one that had used carpet. I wasn't excited about that. But having lived in apartments now, I realize the importance of having a brand new air condition. If you can show them you're getting a brand new air condition, plus you're getting the full wood flooring, that's pretty exciting, especially to the mama bear. She understands the benefit of that, because nobody wants to wake up at 12 o'clock at night and it be 82 degrees in the apartment.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. The HVAC is definitely one of those overlooked items I think is very important.
For sure.
So when you took over this property, obviously it was kind of at I don't want to say the tail end. I don't even know if we're now at the tail end, but where it was kind of in the middle of COVID, right? And so obviously there was some delinquency on the property. How bad was the delinquency from COVID?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
I would say once we took over, it was no less than $300,000 in arrears.
Wow.
Which again is an opportunity for us to try to collect that. It's also an opportunity for us to move out those tenants that aren't paying and they're maybe on a below market rent, and for us to go in there, do our renovations and improve the property. So, you can't look at it as a negative. You budget for it. You knew it was going to happen. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I know you guys do a lot of Class A only, and we had 2 Class A that we owned during COVID, and I learned a lot of lessons. I had 21 assets during COVID. We have 19 today with 2 more in contracts. But I had 2 Class A properties, and delinquency during COVID was zero. Never had to worry about it. And the rest of my workforce housing, knocking on rent every day. So we knew that was going to be an issue for us. We knew going into it that if you got a 400 unit beast, one of the things you're going to run into is heavy delinquency. So we had plenty of reserves built up. We knew we'd have a drop off from it, but we also knew there was an opportunity in multiple ways to take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's very good. Let's move kind of into some of the due diligence even further here. And was there anything that came up during the due diligence that, maybe the lender required you to replace something or anything like that?
No, not in this case. There's been certainly situations, where the lender has required us to do that. Like, if they see your renovation program is in depth, they see the scope, they see the money you're going to commit to it. If you spend certain dollar amounts, they get really excited and warm and fuzzy, because remember, you really don't own the asset, right, Dan? The bank owns it. And you know who owns it, because if you miss a payment, the bank will remind you who owns it, right? And they're very happy with the money you spend on the asset that they own. You're basically leasing it from them. And I try to tell my investors that, look, we don't own this. We're leasing it and we're cash flowing off of it. And the bank is the best partner because they just want the same amount of money every single month. That's all they care about. And that you live up to your expectations. So at the beginning of our underwriting, and when we apply for those loans, we give them a very thorough scope. of work that we're going to do. If we have the bids, we even submit the bids. But really, we've never really had that issue. Sometimes we will skimp out on some certain things like concrete work. I don't know if you've done any workforce housing, but there's concrete work around. Sometimes we'll try to get away with not having to do certain areas or what have you. If the lender's a little picky, they'll want us to work on that. Some of the old electrical boxes are an issue as well. You know, you have your Federal Pacifics and you have your stab lock. I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. And sometimes the lender will require you, or an insurance company will require you to do that. But, you know, we've got a pretty good due diligence team, a pretty good project management team. So they kind of know what to look for. It's not their first rodeo. So that allows us to stay just a little bit in front of the lender's requirements.
So let's move into the financing side of this.
Yeah.
You know, what did you guys end up doing as far as the debt?
Yeah, so I because of where rates were, we had a variable rate term on this. So our rate does float. It wasn't tied to LIBOR; it's tied to SOFR, which was, I don't know what it is. It's like under 2%, right? It's a really low number right now, and so we have a variable rate note. It's partial recourse to me. And the reason why I did that is that if I go put Fannie Mae, that's great. I lock that money in there. I'm safe. My family's safe. But I can't really get the equity that I know is going to be there in a few years without paying a penalty or getting stuck into a supplemental loan or something like that. I want to be able to have options. I want plenty of options. I may not like this deal in 4 to 5 years. But if I have a Fannie Mae loan, the best I can do is a supplemental loan, and now I still own this deal for a little longer. I want the option to get out. So we have bank debt on this particular deal. We have a preferred lender that we have all of our operating accounts with, that I've done almost all my deals with them, if it wasn't Fannie based. And so they give us pretty good terms. I think we got somewhere around 4%. And then, I'm sorry, excuse me, not 4%, excuse me. We got LIBOR, excuse me, SOFR. And so the rate floats a little bit with us. So it's been a good relationship with them.
What was the number of basis points above the SOFR?
I wish Sam was here. I apologize. He's out today. I would have had him on this call with me. He's more the finance guy. I just remember it wasn't a lot. I mean, it was like, I think SOFR, like 24 basis points right now. So I want to say like 1 point something, 1.8, 1.75. It's right around 2% total
Okay.
all in.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I'm assuming that you probably purchased a interest rate cap on that, or was that
I think
not
we did.
required?
I think we
Okay.
did. Yeah. And we've got a IO for at least 3 years, if I recall.
Okay, so 3
Maybe even
years
5.
IO.
Yeah, maybe even 5. I don't remember. I know it's a good 5-year term, and it may have been full. It may have been IO for the full term, but I know it's at least 3 years because we would never done anything less than 3.
And 30-year AM.
Yeah, 30-year AM.
Yeah.
30-year AM.
Cool. So let's move over to structuring with the investors a little bit.
Yes.
So how did you end up structuring this with your investors?
Right. So we do a straight 80-20 split. There's 1% acquisition fee, 1% dispo fee. There's 3% for property management, 2% for asset fee. And then we do a straight 80-20 split of profits.
And on the asset management fee, what is it based on? Is it based off of the gross income off the property, or is
Yes,
it
it
based
is.
off of the equity? Okay.
No, it's based off of the gross income of the property.
Okay. And so 1 and 1 and 80-20, no pref, just a straight
No pref.
80-20.
Straight 80-20.
No other hurdles down the line or anything like that.
No hurdles. There is a 1% dispo fee and a 1% acquisition fee.
Okay. All right, good. That's pretty good. And what capital were you, or did you raise on this particular project?
That one, I think we raised, give me a minute. I think that was around $9 million, if I recall.
Okay.
It was roughly, give me the math. Give me 1 second. No, it was closer to $13 million.
13. Okay.
$13 million.
So 13 million on this one. And what's your typical investor profile like? Are they kind of like, what kind of an investor is it? Is it just a high net worth retail investor, or is
Yeah,
it
they're going to
else?
be, yeah. So they're going to be accredited only. They're going to be an investor that's probably a pilot or a doctor or an attorney, some sort of professional that has a means to them, and they meet the accreditation definition. Many of them are re-up. I use social media to be able to raise some of my money. So on this particular deal, 40% of the people that invested in this were not previously in our deal, or were not previously in our database before. They found us through social media.
Wow. So all of your marketing for investors is just straight from the social media.
Yeah, when I was part of the real estate club, I was in that club. So my umbilical cord was the equity within the club. But when I separated from the club at the end of 2019, I had to learn social media, and I think I'm getting there. I follow guys like Grant Cardone and Gary Vaynerchuk. I've gone to visit them multiple times. Been to Grant's place probably 6 times in the last 2 years for different masterminds and learning from him. So he and I have become friends. We DM each other once in a while when he's in Houston. But I want what the guys are what other guys are doing, and I'll take what works for me. I'll put my spin on it, and we'll go from there. I don't agree with everything that they do, but I think social media is where it's at. It's attention follows money, money follows attention. So if you don't live here, then you don't exist, and that goes true for my properties too. I don't use social media as an ego trip. I use social media to highlight my properties. I want to make sure I put maximum eyeballs on my team. We have a full we have a full marketing team in-house. One person concentrates strictly on the Facebook, Instagram, social media ads. I have another person that concentrates on the Google side of that and our CRM as well. And then we have a full-time media person that does our videography and our editing. And so we're constantly trying to create eyeballs. I mean, right now we're in our set. We've got a 4,400 square foot office here in Houston off Post Oak, and 400 square feet of that, 10% of the total space is committed to this media room that we have, this podcast room where we do our webinars and our podcasts.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is that also the one who's running the back end of this right now?
Yeah, his name's Tyler.
So you need to get onto him, because I saw a system update on your TVs in the background there a minute ago.
Oh no! Well, I apologize for Tyler. This is Tyler's third day. He just joined us. He was on a trip with National Geographic, so he's been all over the world, but he's trying to slow down a little bit and find some roots. So we're very fortunate to have him here in Houston.
No worries. I just thought I'd give him a bust his chops just a little bit. So
yeah, he's laughing.
Can you think of any other issues or problems, or maybe even some good things that maybe happened on this acquisition that we have not touched on yet that might be good for our listeners to learn about?
Yeah, I don't know your typical listener. I'm going to assume that it's somebody that's getting into real estate for the first time, and I'm going to assume it's somebody that's been in it for a while. I've learned this because I know you focus primarily on Class A's. Is that correct?
The B+ with value add, so there's a little bit on the higher end, and then the suburban Class A's.
Okay. So first of all, education, anything 5 units or more is considered multifamily. If you're considering getting a multifamily, I highly, highly recommend you buy your own first. Buy a deal and learn how it works and see, is that a path, right, that you want to do? Because I'm convinced that multifamily is generational wealth changing. For me and for my investors, it's worked. A $10,000 investment in 2007 turned into tens of millions of dollars in net worth for my family. And also for the investors that have chosen to invest with me in the last 10 years. I've been very fortunate when I hear that somebody retired because of their investments with us, or somebody went to some Ivy League school, or their children went to an Ivy League school because of their investments with us. I've got a guy from 2007 that put from 2010 that put $100,000 on my very first deal at Rockstar Capital, and he now owns 11 deals worth 1.7 million off that original 100,000. So I'm a big fan of multifamily, but I'm also a fan of you understanding how to do it first. So if you want to get started, invest in yourself before you invest in anything. Join a real estate club, watch a lot of YouTube, and get your hands dirty. Understand what it is that Dan and I do, and if this is something you want to do full time, or if it's not, then you invest with someone like Dan or I, because it's just not really your cup of tea. I know a lot of guys that go into it that have accounting backgrounds, that have other backgrounds, that it just doesn't fit for them. A sales guy, I think, is a natural fit for this because it's understanding people. But get your hands dirty. Anything 5 units or more counts. And then you can make a determination of whether or not you want to stay with it. Everybody starts in the workforce housing. That's what you do. Nobody buys Class A out of the box. That's where you got to cut your teeth. That's where you have to learn the lessons. That's where you're going to get lied to. That's where you're going to make mistakes. I can tell you I've done 4,000 units in the last 10 years, and I probably could have done more if they weren't workforce housing. I'm coming to realization that at the point I'm in right now, where I think, where cap rates are and what have you, I can probably get the same juice out of the vine if I start focusing a little bit more on Class A. So our last couple of acquisitions have been Class A because I think they're a little bit easier. As I said during my conversation earlier, during COVID, my 2 Class A's, there were no issues at all. a little bit of occupancy fluctuation, but nothing crazy. But delinquency was zero. The Class A tenant paid. It was the knocking on doors of my workforce housing, the other 3,800 units that that puts in gray hairs on me. So as I look back at my career, you get started in workforce housing, but I can tell you it slowed me down and it's worn me down. And so the newer deals have juice in them, especially if you're buying the kind that you're buying, where they're high B plus value add components that you can bring them to a current standard where you can compete with some of the newer product. Those tenants are just different. They're just built differently. And if you can apply some of the same principles, you can still get some juice on that. But you got to get to that point first. Now, you may not want to do it at all. And if you don't want to do it all, that's fine. Find someone like Dan, find someone like me, find somebody in your area, but get educated first. Join the real estate club and understand exactly what it is that we do.
I got two final questions for you, Albert, as we're wrapping up the episode here. They're kind of contrasting questions. And the first one is, what did you find during this specific acquisition that was a little bit easier that maybe originally you thought was going to be a little bit more challenging?
I'll tell you what, this was our first 400 plus unit deal. And the reason for that is that it takes a lot of work. It takes a team. I built this company up slowly where I was the one-man gang. I did the very first Facebook ad. I did asset management. I did the property management. I did the lease training. I did the accounting. It takes a village. I was very afraid to go after a 400 unit deal. If you're out there and you think you want to buy a 400 unit deal, be very careful because there's a lot of moving parts on this. Today we had our department head meeting and I had asset management, I had training, I had marketing, I had head of operations in there, I had project management talking about the renovation for this project because it's almost done. That's 5 different hats that one person or a smaller team are going to have to wear. So when you're chasing a big deal, I wouldn't have done it before, but because I had a team now, we had grown to a 120 person team with 20 plus in my operation team and my corporate team, I felt the security to purchase a deal this large.
Yeah. And then the last question here is kind of the opposite of that is, what did you find that was more challenging that maybe that you thought was originally going to be more challenging, but it ended up being a little bit easier?
Oh, great question. I knew there would be delinquency issues. I did not know the government was going to come to aid us with the Texas rent relief and what have you. I was ready to write these people off and kick them out out. I mean, that's why I started the lien program, because I was going to force them out. That created an opportunity for us to collect that rent. The negative to that is you rely on the tenant to have to apply for it, which is why we've had to go and hire a full-time person to just literally work with each one of these tenants and get them to apply for the money that they owe us. Had that money not been there, it would have been a little bit different. We wouldn't, it's hard to say. We would have had to operate it differently, but the money is there, but you now got to be patient for it. So I guess there's two sides to the coin. It's like you've got to wait, or you can force them out. It's always nice if you don't have to hurt them. In some cases, they did not have jobs. That is true. And I feel for those people. It was very difficult. I'm glad the government had aid for them. But I think, as you would probably agree with it, because I think we may have been on a panel once, there was too much aid, way too much aid. And I got started in the program, in real estate in 07, 08 during the Great Recession. And there was no aid. It really was kill or be killed. I put people into the dirt that were near me, competitors, only to see them come back to life with somebody else at an even lower basis point, right? So I think the government did okay by doing what they did because they prevented a massive meltdown. But man, I was ready for the war to end, man. I was ready to go and see what we had to do to stay afloat. We had our battle plan ready. I'm a wartime general. I was there before. There's a lot of peacetime generals here that panicked, that didn't know what to do, that took the forbearance. That's a whole nother conversation we could probably have, and they're having to pay for that today. But it was, the government made it easier for us. I just think that at some point the adult has to stand up, pull the pacifier out of the mouth of the baby, and we need to move forward. So I'm really happy living in Texas that our governor has done that. I'm happy that the governor of Florida has done that. It's created a situation where now the rest of the country is starting to get out of it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. Well, Robert, I want to thank you so much. I originally said we might only spend about 30, 35 minutes, and now it's almost close to an hour. So that's what happens when you have a great episode. But
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you having. I appreciate you spending some time with me here. And how can the listeners reach out to you if they have some further questions for you about this acquisition, or they want to continue to follow you more?
Absolutely, please, please. So you can follow me on social media at on Instagram at Apartment Rockstar. You can find some more free YouTube videos. I don't have any educational courses. I just like to give out information for free. I like to get on podcasts like this. So there's a lot of free info. Again, and before you invest in anything, invest in yourself. Or if you just want to be my friend, hit me up at Facebook at Robert Martinez. But if you're interested in investing with us potentially in the future, please hit us at investing at rockstar-capital.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for being here. Looking forward to continuing to follow you, and maybe we'll have you back as well with another great episode as you continue to close more deals.
I look forward to it. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much.